Hey guys, welcome back to another build for Iratus Lord of the Dead. Before we get started, I just want to thank you guys. The last couple of days have been pretty cool watching the channel grow from 0 to 20 subscribers, but quite a few views. So thanks so much for pitching in, and all you guys from Reddit and Discord that have been dropping by. I'm going to leave links to the Iratus Reddit and Discord communities below this video, and if you're not already a part of that, please feel free to join us and talk about this great game. So the build I got today, I call this the Classic. I call it the Classic because it reminds me of the first real power build that was able to finish the game way back in early access. I think there were only about 8 minions and 2 floors and such, but these are a lot of the same minions that were used in that build back then. And we talked about the Dark Knight in our tier list and how he's not the greatest tank in the world, and we've certainly been experiencing that throughout this run. But what he does do very well is use his stance ability, No Tomorrow, to empower stress attackers and debuffers to win the game through wearing down your opponent and triggering this stress damage off the Dark Knight. So he's a reasonable tank. We've given as much help as we possibly can, really, with these armored plates. And we've got this Heart of Emptiness, which is really another key to this build. Triggering the 5 mana and 5 Wrath every time the Dark Knight gets hit really lets you spam your spells and Wrath abilities, and we'll get to the importance of Wrath abilities right after this. Don't underestimate his single target attack. You don't use it too much, but when you do, I mean, 44 to 46 stress damage from a tank unit, that's pretty good. And then there's also, there it is, Dark Offering, remove all debuffs from the Dark Knight. So this comes up every once in a while. It also gets you Wrath and mana, so if you're really in a tough spot for mana, Wrath, or if you got some really nasty debuff on the Dark Knight, you can do that to get that back. Looking at his stats, we've done really an even spread here. A lot of Dread recently. We just threw some nice items on him in the last little bit to pump up his Dread, but before that we were just kind of spreading things out, getting a little bit of Dread, a little bit of Vigor, a little bit of Initiative, a little bit of Evasion, just to sort of take advantage of the fact that the Dark Knight does a little bit of everything well. So he's our frontliner, and right behind him we got the Banshee. Banshee is, believe it or not, despite the dress, quite a good tank, and we'll explain why. She's got a 47% evasion, which is good, and then she's got a second slipper item here, which gives her a bit of sustain every time an attack is missed. So if you figure, attacks are missing half the time or what, 20% vigor, that adds up quite a bit. So she's got some interesting abilities. This is a really strong single target stress attack with a couple of nice abilities. It's not really a pull, but a shuffle, and then it does a debuff. She's got a multi-target crescendo with a rather weak debuff, but that does trigger the Dark Knight. But her most important ability, of course, is the Howl, Shattering Howl, that does a stun. So this is a 2-target stun, 100%, costs 50 Wrath. We're able to trigger it pretty much all the time. And what she does is she just keeps those first 2 positions on the opponent's team locked down. When it comes to stats, very important that you get a block and a ward on her just to sort of mitigate anything that does get through. Dread, not quite as important because she actually doesn't spend a lot of time casting her Dread abilities. She's usually doing stuns, so what you really want to be doing is pumping up this evasion. So we've got it up 4 spots. It's getting kind of pricey, but we would like to get that up all the way before we get a little farther into the game. The Unfrozen's the 3rd spot. He wasn't around when this build was originally popular. You could certainly get a lot of mileage out of the Wraith if you don't have the Unfrozen. I've been asked to, sort of figure in what we could do if we didn't have all of the minions unlocked. So what are we looking at here? About a level 13 Brain. Drop that in there. We're going to take his 3-target ability, the Ghostly Inferno. He actually works better than the Unfrozen for strictly attacking stress, but the Unfrozen has a little bit more utility. So if you are running the Wraith, you're going to be using this Ghostly Inferno just about every turn. When you're not using it, you've got a very strong single target attack with either a push or just a bit larger. This one also removes all buffs, so it does sort of the same thing as the Banshee. And then he's got a weak magic attack. I say it's weak, 125%. The reason why it's weak is you can't upgrade it. So it's good. It's nice to have, but it's not as good as the Ice Lance and the options that the Unfrozen has. So if you don't have the Unfrozen unlocked, use the Wraith. you do have the Unfrozen. We're going to talk about him. So everyone knows about the Ice River. Unfrozen, fantastic. Triple target attack. Does a debuff to all 3 units. Does quite a bit of damage as he scales up with his feature of gaining percentage of his damage due to the difference in initiative. So on this guy, you got the Rune Emitter, gives him 6 stacks of initiative in longer fights. You're doing initiative damage to your opponents, and yeah, he's gonna do the same thing he does in most of our builds. We use this guy a lot. He works just as good right here. He's also got a physical attack, single target ice lance that interrupts stances. This is great because it ignores block. We're not removing blocks with our units, so if you are going to use physical attack, you want to make sure it has ignores block on there. So that's for if we ever need a single target attack. We use this one a lot. It's a single target 40% damage boost against that unit. So anytime we're picking off one unit, this one's a good one to use. It's also got a debuff and a pull, so a great little ability. And Embrace of Frost, we use this one as well. I've used this more. I think in one of the previous videos I talked about how this wasn't all that useful. In this build, it actually is fairly useful. Sometimes you have to save the Banshee or even the Dark Knight with this ability just to buy a turn. And his ultimate doesn't get used as much as we had before, just because we're using so much Wrath of the Banshee. But it's still here. It's still very good. 6 of one, half dozen the other. I like this one better because you get the 2 initiative here, and this might as well just read 10% damage bonus. Stats, same thing we always do. Attack, initiative, and a little bit of accuracy. So he's your glass cannon. We are going to pump up his points and everything else eventually, but really what we want this guy doing is as much damage as possible. Last use the Shade. Used him quite a bit before. Black Radiance, minus 40 accuracy to a single unit. It's got 2 actions on it, and it lasts for 2 turns, so can basically, in an ideal situation, give a big accuracy penalty to 2 units with this, stun 2 units with the Banshee, and between the 2 of them, you're crowd controlling the whole team. It doesn't usually work out that way. You don't usually get those perfect situations, but when it does, it's pretty nice. And then once you run them out of sanity, you're coming in there with the big Void Claw, swiping for 100% damage. You've got this for sustain to give him 25% of his attacks, get you more mana and wrath to do more stuns, and then with the mana generation, you're going to be casting fun spells like Finger of Death and such. So this guy doesn't really benefit too much from all this stuff, which is a shame because he can get just about everything. We bumped up his wards and such, but his big claw doesn't get affected by the attack damage. His attack damage is only affected by this, which is weird. Only the feature of dealing damage in retaliation. Otherwise, it does nothing. We're going to take it in for what is this, a second floor elite fight? Looks kind of rough. Hopefully we do all right here. We haven't used an artifact, so kind of ran out a little bit earlier. So we want to make sure that we're getting value out of this guy's Ice River. So even though it would be great to knock these guys down a little bit, we want to make sure we act after our Dark Knight. So we're going to let these guys all take a good chunk. These Musketeers, as always, very dangerous. Want to make sure you CC them as quickly as possible. But yeah, things do get a little hairy for the Knights sometimes. We're going to put that CC on the Musketeer. You see that triggered ability off of the stance. We've got the ability to stun 2 targets in the front. We're going to take it. Again, triggers the Dark Knight ability. And we're back around to where we skipped our turn. Triple target attack. 3 triggers off of the Dark Knight. Now we got a lot of spells to use here, and we got full mana, so we're going to really think about what we want to be doing here. You cast your spells with this build, I find, a lot more than you do in some other ones, so we don't need a dispel right now. We could heal up our Dark Knight. He does look a little bit low. It is a little bit scary. I think we will do that just to make sure that he doesn't get gibbed. As you can see, these guys are doing a good chunk on these guys' sanity. Some of them will probably be going crazy soon, so we're going to go back in the stance. Can we kill any of these? I don't think so. Oh, maybe this guy. That's going to be close. 116 versus 123. Yeah, that's not going to work. So we're just going to put Oh, this guy's already got a debuff, huh? Well, maybe we'll just give him a chunk. Maybe we'll crit. No, maybe we'll just kill him. Alright. Wasn't expecting that. So this guy's stunned. This guy isn't. What I like to do in this situation is just do a wait, even though this guy's kind of dangerous. We're feeling really... If we hadn't healed up our Dark Knight, we probably would just do the stun again and sort of waste one part of it. But we're going to let this guy act once in order to get the double stun here. Because I'm not sure he can do his big, powerful attacks from the second position anyway. And he's got 2 wards. That's a darn shame. I think we do it anyway. We end up not being able to get the stun regardless of what we did with that. I don't think there was a play there that would enable us to let us stun 2 targets there. I think that was just the way it kind of came out. Let me know down in the comments if I missed something and I misplayed that. Please let me know. Now we got the big claw. We're going to use it on the most dangerous target, leaving us with basically 2 targets in the front here. I think at this point we are going to stun them both, just because I think we're going to kill this guy next turn anyway, so we don't really care if he acts. I'm going to put the debuff on the treasurer, get him ready for the big claw if needed. At this point I think we can come out of our stance, take that last bit of his sanity. As you can see, Dark Knight does a pretty good chunk with that W ability. We got our choice here, unlucky or weakness. Kill this guy. Really no rhyme or reason there, kind of picked randomly. Because we've got this stun, and it looks like the fight's pretty much over. Put on our debuff, hit him with the W, and that's the win. So there you have it, guys, the classic, one of the oldest and best loved builds in Iratus Lord of the Dead. Thanks so much for watching, and if you made it this far, please hit that like and subscribe.